Jacksonville, a child was born who couldn't sit still. 86 years later with no regret. You know that man can't sit still yet. The Great Depression couldn't get him down. He worked for his dad's store in town, collecting money in small amounts for poor whites and blacks in their furniture accounts. Stetson Kennedy wants us all to be free. Stetson Kennedy wants us all to be free. As he'd collect, he'd talk to folks. He'd hear legends, tales, songs, and jokes. Now this fine treasure he'd record and write. He was colorblind, didn't see black and white. Writer's project for the WPA. Zora Neale Hurston, he earned his pay. Crackers and blacks, they talked for hours. It was a barefoot history of this land of flowers.
On the 23rd of May 2019, the week that was, from WBRN Radio and on the Boston Red Network. The Boston Red here from the Jerry Pippin broadcast booth. The Mueller investigation is officially ended, and the report is ready. Supposedly this weekend it'll be shared with some people in the Congress, at least parts of it, from the information we have been receiving here from the Washington Post, various other sources, the BBC Worldwide News, and others. They interviewed various people on the periphery, former federal prosecutors, etc. Where do we go from here? Well, in this type of situation, I suppose you look at it in two different ways. This investigation has a criminal component to it. Over 30-something people that were associated with the campaign or the DJ Trump organization have been indicted. Some of them are already in jail or have done plea bargains, and more to come. The Trump associate Stone will be tried in the fall, I believe. His trial will start fall to late summer. Thus, this back to the report. This type of report is very tenuous at best. Some Republican operatives are saying since there was no indictment, there would be no collusion with the Trump administration directly. Now, this was on the Russian involvement. The Department of Justice has a rule, and this is the other part of the report, that they don't name people unless they've been indicted. Now, there's some instances that rule has been broken. In the case of Hillary Rodham Clinton, an unfortunate situation. She had not been indicted, but at the director at the time, Comey, informed the public that the FBI had not found any charges against her. But at the same time, it opened up a can of worms. So in this case, there will be no naming of people that have been investigated and have not been indicted. Now, the other parts of the report are very, very iffy at best. Which side benefits from this? Very difficult to say at this point in time. One of the pitfalls we at this mic see that any reports of this in the news media is time that the Democrats could be using to get their program for 2020 out with the various candidates. And Trump and the Russian investigation would dominate the news with no place to go. Now, the difference in this investigation primarily and Watergate, totally different. First of all, there were only a number of media outlets that covered it, primarily the Washington Post and their deep throat operation, and to a certain extent New York Times. And this was syndicated throughout the nation. So we got it in our newspaper readings, and of course we had regular TV at the time. We did not have cable, so it was not amplified as much, and of course there was no internet or social media out there. But in this instance, things are amplified, and when you get various sources putting out little pieces, this is really not the way you want to deal with a criminal case, or in this case, the other shoe is the political case. Now you hear the word impeachment there. This would be the ultimate solution for DJ Trump in the political part of it. Now, if there are committees investigating little pieces of evidence here and little pieces of evidence there, that's not very effective. And impeachment in the political sense is not coming unless the people in the House of Representatives are assured that they have at least a possibility of picking up enough Republican votes in the Senate when there is actually the trial, the impeachment trial. Because just to impeach DJ Trump in the House doesn't matter. That happened to Bill Clinton, and Bill Clinton was impeached, and the trial before the Senate Chief Justice at the time presiding there. But it really didn't matter, because the Democrats had the votes. Thus Bill Clinton was not convicted, and he remained the president and went on to a triumph in his re-election. Now that is an illustration of what can happen in an impeachment episode. But at the time, the country was not as highly polarized, and there was not as much money. We did not have this Citizens United operation out there where literally billions of dollars can be spent to spend anything. Trump is in Florida. His legal team left with Trump, and they'll be analyzing. Now, the Attorney General Barr can present this information to them ahead of time, because, again, he's in the executive branch, and so is Trump. Trump is the head of the executive branch. So if Trump and company get a heads up on the report, they can spin it anyway, and Barr has said he would let as much of the report out as possible, but not all of it. And there are other instances which we alluded to earlier, that is people that are unindicted, that may or may not see the light of day, because that is in the Justice Department. Now, there could be leaks, yes, but leaks on top of leaks. Will the leaks be coming from the various congressional committees that will have access to this, or people that have access? In other words, it could be not only secondary leaks, but secondary and third-party leaks at times, because these reporters that hang around Washington have their sources even within the Justice Department. Now, how many people in the Justice Department will have direct access to this report? Very difficult to say, because again, not only the various administrative types that will read the report, there has to be some other people there, IT people, clerical people, all kinds of people that come in and that have friends that if they can't take the report directly out, they can figure out ways to capture it, or they can memorize certain portions of it, etc. By reading it. They can screen capture it. I mean, there are many, many ways they can get this report out. So we at the Boston Red Network are covering this very sparingly, because we don't want to be caught out in Never Never Land with the rest of these characters. Now, there are efforts within the Democratic Party, or people within there that are pushing impeachment, and this one millionaire has been pushing it along. But does that really go anyplace? The answer to that is no. If you don't have the votes in the Senate, you can make a case for impeachment. But even in the House, if you pass the articles of impeachment, how much support nationwide you'll get. Now, Trump's going to get his 40-something%, and we'll talk about some polling here before we leave. There's one poll out that had Trump at 45%, actually 2 points above Rasmussen, who is always the outliner in the polling game. We'll start off here with Karl Rove, where we usually start off sometime within it. And we'll also talk about the scandal at the Southern Poverty Law Center. We'll go to the Montgomery Advertiser. The Southern Poverty Law Center is in Montgomery, Alabama. So we'll look at that, and the president has now will resign very shortly. And as little information as we have, we do have some, and we'll do some commentary on it. Let's go to Karl Rove. He still has his fascination with Robert Francis O'Rourke, otherwise known as Bento. I think that's how you pronounce his name. But nonetheless, old Bento has been out and about. He was in Iowa, and he went from Iowa to New Hampshire, covered all 10 counties in New Hampshire. And he was also, I believe before going there, he was at Penn State and several other locations in Pennsylvania. And then today he shifted to South Carolina. He was in Columbia, South Carolina, driving the mayor around on his way to a speaking engagement there in South Carolina. He was also at a historic African American University at Orangeboro, South Carolina, where they had the Orangeboro massacre. So he's getting around to various diverse audiences with his style of retail politics, where effectively he's driving himself and some of his crew from El Paso, Texas, around these various states. He's giving a canned speech and adding to it, and at the same time he's answering questions. Now, this is very, very valuable when you build up your name recognition. He knows, for instance, going to Orangeboro University, that the students there will remember him as probably the first candidate. I don't know if any other candidate's been there or not, but they will remember him. They will tell their friends. They will post things on Facebook. They will tell their parents. And the mayor there in Columbia, he's an African American. Just the idea of him being driven around talking to Beto itself is a shot in the arm for him, because whether or not the mayor has endorsed him or not, he's in his campaign footage, and then at the rally there. And that, of course, would be in the, I believe it's the state newspaper. I'd have to ask Nancy Lockhart. She's there. I'll have to also ask Nancy about her impressions of Beto in South Carolina. But that's your general idea. Of course, he doesn't have a regular job now. He can get out and about. We've been in campaigns before where we went from one small town, large city to make an impression. You do regional sorts of things. I forget how many counties they have in South Carolina. I think the number was over 200. He can't make all of those, but he can make turn that into regions of the state and make various regions. Now, this is his first trip. He'll be making multiple regions. And then, of course, you go to other places and you start covering the map where you need to be. Texas, he's already known, so he doesn't need to be there. He'll no doubt go to places like Mississippi, Louisiana. Now, when you're running in Texas, there's some overflow, so he went into the TV stations, into parts of Louisiana, and probably also Arkansas. But he'll go to those places, and that's what in football is called stretching out the defense. He'll stretch those other candidates out. He had a very good first day of fundraising. he beat out Bernie by a few dollars, but Bernie had more donors. What this basically means, he's well funded, he's filled up, and this is why Karl Rove with dozens of other people are attacking him early in the campaign stage, because O'Rourke is one of the people that could cause him a lot of damage, because first of all, he's charismatic. Secondly, he has the type of retail politics skills that some of the others don't have. Of course, he's bilingual. I found out today, of all people, Twitter King Booker is bilingual, can speak Espanol, and has Espanol commercials, so Twitter King is slipping around also. Then there's Kamala Harris out there, and you have these people. And Biden, we haven't heard anything from Biden when Biden jumps in the race or not. Biden's big problem will be that you have these energetic types that are running around. Then he has Bernie Sanders, his age. Bernie has staked out his. And Bernie's advantage is he has name recognition out there because he's ran before. So he goes back into Iowa. People there already know where Bernie is. And Elizabeth Warren, she was at Morgan State, I believe. Let me do Karl Rove here. I don't want to spend too much time on this. He calls it Reloaded. He's writing again in the Wall Street Journal on the 21st of March. Human nature being what it is. Many candidates run for office the same way they did the last time. Take 15 Democratic, and he's trying to cut Beto out down by doing this. The former Representative O'Rourke. When O'Rourke ran for the Senate in Texas in 2018, he was an energetic, charismatic campaigner who visited all 254 counties. In the state, he gave inspirational speeches to Democrats heavy on appeals for unity and optimism. Well, you always talk about optimism. Generally speaking, very few candidates can get away with pessimism if you're not somebody like a DJ Trump. And that also depends on the people you're trying to talk to. Divorced of substance, he relies on a breathless positive news conference, breathlessly, while using social media to establish a personal channel to his supporters. He raised $80 million for his Senate race. O'Rourke follows a similar pattern in his presidential campaign. In the opening day, he all but announced he was running in a puff piece that was on the 13th of May, aptly named the Vanity Fair magazine. Another cut here. This was followed by a quickie video of the candidate and his wife sitting on their living room couch. O'Rourke then hit the campaign trail, displaying enormous energy. Opened a 3-day, within 3 days, 15 city swing through Iowa, hitting rural counties. That's what you do. That voted for Barack Obama before being flipped to DJ Trump. This is followed by 2 days in largely Democratic strongholds in eastern Iowa, the bastion of reporters from national newspapers and, cable followed him. This week he zoomed through all 10 New Hampshire counties in only 2 days. Elsewhere he goes, he's met by throngs of curious, enthusiastic Democrats. Linkio, he's 6'4". I knew he was tall. I didn't know how tall he was. Has started to stand on restaurants, counters and chairs to address crowds. Well, when you're 6'4", you don't have to stand on too many things. He has again struck an aspirational tone, telling voters, let's not allow our differences to define us. Effectively what President Obama said in his campaigns. There are no blue or red states, and often responding to questions on issues by calling each one an idea we should explore, and the money he has poured in. His campaign raised $6.1 million the first 24 hours, and Bernie was at $5.9 million. Well, that's 0.2 million more. Still running the same kind of campaign. The second time carries risk, no doubt about that. Like President Obama, he said he could probably do every job on the campaign better than the people that I hired to do them. O'Rourke seems to suspect he's the smartest man around in the Senate race. He's made a point of not hiring consultants or posters. He could pull that off in Texas, and Texas is a hell of a large state. You have to realize it is a very, very large state. He lost the election, but running for president is a bit of a bigger enterprise, but order of magnitude, no doubt about that. To win, he must build a team of smart people and listen to them. That requires leadership, management skills. It may be beyond the reach of a punk rocker musician turned web services small business founder. I knew he was in the internet business. I knew he did web services, but has an advantage for Beto O'Rourke. Beto O'Rourke understands the internet, the possibilities, probabilities, and pitfalls in social media. You have a social media type. President Obama, although he had an iPhone, was not in the programming game. But as far as the ability to manage things, yes, President Obama had been an organizer, and a damn good organizer. Not only had he been an organizer, he had been a lawyer and a law professor. So he understood the law. He was well-read, very good writer. I don't know about Beto's skills as a writer. We just don't know. But Beto does understand his video. I can tell that. These days, there was an old political type that I worked with, and this fella's whole idea was, forget about it. And his was a little different from Beto's. He didn't do a lot of personal appearances. He used TV exclusively to reach out to people. He didn't win elections, but he was able to reach out across vast amounts and get voters. And had he put it all together, Beto understands that if he goes to a small state like New Hampshire and makes all 10 counties in strategic cities, everyone in those 10 counties are talking about one thing. Beto O'Rourke was here and how he performed in the counties. He's answering questions, and now the smartest man in the room, person in the room, will always usually try to come up with an answer to every question. Beto O'Rourke does not. He repeats the question. If he doesn't already have an answer, he says basically we'll look into it. And he moves along with that situation. And he's not running out a lot of divisive rhetoric. Not at this time, doesn't need to. He wants to build a positive name recognition. All the candidates do. But when you are 6'4", you do command a lot of space. There's no doubt about that. So they see him. He's a Texan in New England. And the New Hampshire stations will cover him. And he'll get into the Commonwealth. In other words, into Boston. The Boston stations will also cover him. So he's all over New England. He's not going to Vermont. But at the same time, this allows him to move around. Where does Beto strike next? Who knows? He knows Nevada. I don't know if Beto has been to Nevada. I know he's been to Colorado. So he'll be no doubt in Nevada. And he'll leak into California. Now, his type of campaign is tailor-made for California. Large media markets there. You go in and make your splash early where you get this free media. Because when the campaign times comes up, everybody's out there. And since he doesn't have anything else to do but walk the street, and when working for Pat and Turner, as they used to say, in other words, turning the corner and patting his shoes, that's it. It's ideal. He can drive mayors around. I don't think you'll see Liz Warren driving anyone around. Amy Klobuchar was out in a snowstorm. Bernie, I don't know if Bernie would be driving anyone around or not. You never know what Bernie will do. Bernie might show up on roller skates. Anyway, let me finish this up. Has an advantage in Texas. The Senate Ted Line Cruz ignored him, largely letting Beto define himself on his own terms for 17 months. Not until after Labor Day. Well, he didn't need to because everybody knew Ted Line Cruz. Did he really engage his opponent, ultimately beating him by 2.6 points? But you have to understand, Texas was very, very red. Beto O'Rourke had to build what organization in Texas. The Democratic Party had been weak there for a very, very long time, and it had not been statewide. Now, in the urban areas, it was doing a very good job. We're talking about in Houston and those areas. Now, this time would be very different. Beto's Democratic opponents have already dropped opposition research packets on him and sent allies to his events to ask uncomfortable questions, and subsequently criticized him for shallowness and evasiveness on the issues. Watch out for intra-party rivals to make a big deal soon of his past congressional, like means testing entitlements, increasing Social Security eligibility age. And the big challenge for Rourke, as he puts it, however, is his recklessness. One example in his Senate race, speaking about professional football players who refused to stand for the national anthem, he said, "I can think of nothing more American than to take a knee." Well, yes, it is American to have freedom of speech and to take a knee. Now, Beto O'Rourke is playing to his base and people that would support him. He's not playing to DJ Trump's hardcore base. And as far as this oppositional research, Beto is running a very, very smart campaign. What you want people to do is be threatened up by you where the oppositional research comes out early in the cycle. So in other words, it appears now, as old H said, the hit pieces, well, they'll put these hit pieces out. Beto O'Rourke wants them to hit hard and heavy. They put out he was a hacker. Hell, there was no internet when he was hacking. So, in other words, it has no indication today. He later went into internet business. He needs to talk about that a little bit also. His internet business and the internet and the dangers of it, since he has been in the business. He could immediately establish himself as an expert in this campaign as far as the internet, the nuts and bolts of it, and we know he knows some programming. Those are things. What you do is you establish yourself as an authority on certain issues, and since the internet played a big part in the 2016 election, Cambridge Analytics, etc., that is a good posture for him to be in. He's not a lawyer, but the whole point there is a very good posture for him to be in. And the oppositional research coming out here, they're talking about his record. Of course, he comes from Texas. That plays in two things. If progressives don't like him, which some don't, obviously, we have him, third, fourth in our ranking? I think third. Bernie first, Elizabeth Warren, and then old Beto O'Rourke. And, it could be a third or fourth place there. I think fourth place, we have Amy Klobuchar, and then so forth and so forth down. Not where Twitter King Booker is. Somewhere there. Maybe at the bottom of the list. But there's a lot of other characters running around. Kristen Gillibrand, she will kick off at Trump Tower. I've always liked her. But again, we're not officially endorsing anyone because other than Bernie Sanders, because first of all, we're not in the Democratic Party. So we have to run around a little bit differently. Let me just move along here. I'm spending an inordinate amount of time on this segment. We'll cover some other things very, very quickly. We do have to talk about March Madness. The 2020 Democrats picked this up thanks to Vicky in Athens for this. Anyway, 2020 Democrats are dropping like flies from the AIPAC conference. That's a pro-Israeli Zionist conference. Senator Kristen Gillibrand, another 2020 candidate, also confirmed Thursday night that she would not be attending AIPAC. Democrats appear to be moving left on the Israeli-Palestinian conflict, thanks to Ilhan Omar criticism of the Israelis. 7 Democratic candidates have opted to skip this year's American-Israel Public Affairs Committee Policy Conference held annually. That's Kamala Harris. Of course, Bernie Sanders is the leader of this. Elizabeth Warren and Beto O'Rourke, he's not even going. And South Bend there, Butling gang. Anyway, Oh, and Inslee and Julian Castro all confirmed they won't be there. Democrats started pulling out after MoveOn.org, and that is very, very good there, because Bernie is talking about his Jewish faith in this campaign, and they're following the lead of Representative Omar and, of course, Rashina Tlaibali out of Michigan. So the whole idea is members in the legislative body that support the boycott, divestiture movement, divestiture sanctions movement, BDS movement, against the Israeli illegal occupation of Palestinian territory. Omar faced a backlash from Democrats. Well, that was contrived. Critics have tried to paint her comments, which about the AIPAC as use of money to influence of politics. Well, it won't be used as much this year. People won't be going there. So, again, this is net breaking here. But at the same time, Nancy Pelosi will be there, and Schumer will be there also. Now, one of the things to remember, and this is a threat from some of these characters about certain candidates they would not support. Well, that works two different ways. There'll be progressive candidates running against some of these people out here that are running around. Let's get into this is a USA Today, eyes on the prize. In polling, Democrats care more about victory than about ideology. This suits Beto O'Rourke well. As 2020 Democratic candidates field shapes up, Democratic voters by double digits say they are more interested in nominating a candidate who can defeat DJ Trump. Now, this is a USA Today Suffolk University poll. By 55 to 35%, the Democratic survey endorsed electability over ideological purity, even though they also embrace progressive priorities as the Green New Deal. They are even inclined to open to a nominee who espouses socialism. Well, espousing social democraticism. Anyway, the debate over balancing policy positions with electoral appeal is always a part of the calculation in a campaign almost a year before the Iowa caucuses. Well, that'll change. Pragmatic old Henry James comes in here. We would much rather have someone that than Trump, that is Netta Lactus Tillman. Tillman Dick, 66, an innkeeper in Denver. Tillman Dick, who was called random in the poll, happened to be the daughter of the late California Senator, Tom Lankos. I thought I remembered him. He was a very interesting. Now, he was a Zionist. Anyway, she said that the country needs a leader who will right the ship, because I think we have been in very choppy waters with a very bad captain for the last few years. And he mentioned some other people from somewhere, Bolingbrook, around Chicago. Now, this is a poll here. This is a Suffolk poll for USA Today. 14% are undecided, 11%, that's a very high percentage of voting for third-party candidate. 36% are voting for the Democratic nominee, and 39% in this poll. Now, remember, they put in the third-party candidate voting for DJ Trump. The third-party candidate had 11% of that vote. Now, we don't know how that is splitting up. And, fairly high undecided, 14% there. The margin of error is a standard 3%, and let's see, 1,000 people will call red flags for both parties. Amongst independent voters who consider themselves liberals, 1 in 3 now support third-party candidates. That said, there are red flags in the survey for Republicans as well. Trump's re-election is backed by just 38% of those surveyed. No candidate has managed to win the White House with support that low since 1824. In 2016, Trump carried 46%, trailing the Democratic nominee Hillary Clinton, but he won the Electoral College. In a new survey, 48% said they approve of Trump's job. And this is the poll I was talking about, is doing as president. 49% disapprove, an improvement of 43 to 54% on the December rating. The poll of registered voters included, and which is where we get what we usually call the crosstabs, 367 Democrats, 340 Republicans were taken by landlines and mobile phones from the 13th to 17th of March. The margin of error is a plus or minus 3% for the full sample, and 5.1% for the Democrats, and 5.3% for the Republicans. Tax the rich, think progressive. They overwhelmingly prefer a presidential candidate who supports higher taxes on the very wealthy, 87%, Medicare for all, 81%, and free education, 74%. Not every Democratic contender is on board with trying to implement these proposals. Centrists such as Amy Klobuchar have raised questions about the wisdom of moving now to replace the Affordable Care Act. Well, she's sort of moved around a little bit. By solid margins, Democrats back other proposals that are even more far-reaching by 49 to 26. They prefer a candidate who wants to break up the big tech companies, an idea promoted by Elizabeth Warren. 53 to 16, and by a narrow 43 to 40, Democrats say they want to be satisfied with a presidential candidate who thinks the U.S. should be a more social. Very, very close there. Wouldn't really worry about that particular situation. Bringing on Biden, early rundowns of support for presidential contenders are notoriously unreliable, no doubt about that. It looked at which candidate, this is USA Today, are generating the most interest amongst the Democrats. The at the top measure, by far, Vice President Biden seems a position to announce his candidates at 59%. The majority of Democrats and independents say they are excited about his candidacy. Just 17% thinks he shouldn't run. 42% positive margin is better than a 29 point edge he scores in most Democratic polls. Well, that is true for this particular situation. So nonetheless, we've gotten rid of that poll. And let us move on here. We'll get to March Madness in a minute here. And let me just see. Yeah, we'll save this one. Okay, now, I guess we'll go ahead and do this piece here. March Madness. This is from the People's World. Our left of center unionize the NCAA. That's been talked about more in football. When Zion Williamson's foot broke through the sole of his Nike shoes. That was back in February. The sporting world stood still. The consensus number one player in college ball was playing the biggest game of the season, North Carolina versus Duke, and suffered his starting injury in the opening minute. The injury cost Nike $1.1 billion in stock value ratio next day, but they gained it back. The injury came on the doorsteps of March Madness, is the NCAA's most profitable event of the year, to the tune of $900 million. And this is the point we want to make. Despite the billions riding on this performance, the NCAA insists that athletes like Williams are amateurs, and student athletes there only for the love of the game. It forbids them to make money off their performances, even as they support industry worth billions of dollars. Duke alone makes $31 million off a basketball program. A lot of money. They are supposed to only spend 20 hours a week on sports-related activities. In reality, they spend around 40 more than that on practice alone. Schoolwork falls by the wayside. So many schools have outside tutors there and create classrooms in name only. So in other words, the tutors are doing the work. That is not a bad situation. You have tutors at Oxford. Anyway, the University of North Carolina, a few years ago, some former athletes sued the University of North Carolina and the NCAA, claiming they had been denied a meaningful education. It's hard to argue about that. And a lot of those have happened, that people were literally operating at second and third grade level in a university. Inequality of all kinds is on the rise, and the gap between the top and the bottom pay scales is the highest since the Gilded Age. That's the 1900s. The NCAA is not allowing athletes to be paid or even a single autographs for money. We need to change that. College players are on the average worth $212,800 to their programs, and much more the cost of the scholarships. Well, scholarships are nothing there. Billions of dollars are going to be spent on betting. Now, this is a new thing. You can bet on those. On March Madness alone, CBS and Turner paid $19 billion for TV rights to the tournament, and over $1 billion in advertising is spent on the tournament. This is by Brian Wakamo. Never heard of Mr. Brian Wakamo, but we thought we would put it in. And this is from Money Magazine. I thought I'd throw this in. For people that want to see the series, a little late now, but they go to Swing, S-W-I-N, TV. That's a streaming service from Direct that includes Turner and TNN, the two major paid TV channels, airing the NCAA March Madness games, along with the broadcast network CBS. In other words, the service will allow you to view all the games in the tournament without a cable bill. It comes with ESPN2, and you can get a fair share of game highlights as well. After the 7-day trial, you can cancel or pay them $20 a month. One of the better deals out there to avoid cable if you like sports, period. So that is one thing you can look at there. And it goes on to down to zero cost of a 3-day March Madness musical. $4, let's see. The cheapest list price of any ticket. This is one for the Thursday afternoon game that's already went out there. Iowa State versus UAB. Anyway, and then the tickets go up very, very quickly. They start around $120. For $35, members of high school, of college coaches in the last number in the last year were paid more than $1 million. No doubt about that. Mike Kornowski totaled $9.6 million. Well, he brought a lot of money in, I guess you can say that. A range of college players graduating. Success March Madness with Indiana University on the low end, and Davidson College named overall academic champ. And several teams boast of 100% of their basketball players graduating. That's Maryland, Notre Dame, Butler University, and Dayton and Villanova. So some things in here. Discounts, 50% discounts, all regular price Domino Pizza through Sunday, March 22nd, which marks the end of the tournament's first. I won't get into the $595 Vasa Madness deal covering initial. A vasectomy. Oh boy. Well, everything comes in, I suppose. And the prize at Pizza Hut will serve up to any of the three randomly selected contestants, making half-court shot here. That's $1 million there. Nobody usually wins that one. And the annual revenue ranked by Louisville College team, which is tops in the nation after factoring expenses. Louisville's program made a profit of $24.2 million, while the schools such as West Virginia and Notre Dame reported lost $2 million. And the estimated ad revenue for the Super Bowl and March Madness, respectively. The Super Bowl, $240 million, and March Madness at $1.15 billion, respectively, for 2013, the most recent year. The data is out there. It's kind of interesting here. Estimate loss incurred by business due to workers being distracted or unproductive, and this is by Challenger Gray, and at Christmas, $1.9 billion there. And $2 billion plus, that's the amount wagered on the $70 million March Madness brackets filled out. That was for the tournament in, 2015. The total amount expected to be bet on the tournament is $9 billion, only $240 million of which will be wagered in Nevada. The amount paid by CBS and Turner was $10.8 billion for rights to broadcast the tournament. Now that's a 14-year period. And that is that part of it. Let's do the sports now. We're there. And we got to find them. They're here somewhere. Or maybe they aren't here. We'll get to Southern Poverty Law Center. Everybody's getting out of town there. If they can get out of town, I guess. We usually have a rundown here. And this is my old deal here. Anyway, we'll have... Let me get Friday in here. Duke and the North Dakota State. It was Duke 85-61, a runaway there. Virginia 71-56 for Gardner Webb, and in North Carolina Lonner. Anyway, 88-73. Who they were? Anyway, doesn't matter. Tennessee 77-70 over Colgate. Texas Tech, the Red Raiders 72-57 over North Kentucky. It was in Northern Kentucky. Houston 84-55 over Georgia State. Wasn't even a game there. Buffalo 91-74 over Arizona State. Virginia Tech over St. Louis 66-52. Kansas State was defeated by UC Irvine 70-61. One of the surprise ones there. The Oregon Ducks defeated Wisconsin 72-54. Sorry about that. And Iowa defeated Cincinnati 79-72. Ohio State 62-59 over Iowa State. Washington out of Seattle 78-61 over Utah State. Oklahoma 95-71 over Ole Miss. In Liberty 80-76 over Mississippi State, and UCF 73-58 over VCU. There we go. Now to the Major League, to the National Basketball Association. Here's what happens when you're trying to hurry along. In overtime, the Magic 123-119 over the Grizzlies. The Clippers 110-108 over the Cavaliers in Cleveland. The Nuggets 111-93 over the Knicks. The Thunder 116-107 over the Raptors. The Rockets 111-105 over the Spurs. The Bucks win a game 116-87 over the Heat. And finally, the Nets in Los Angeles 111-106 over the Lakers. And Rays 3-2 over the Pirates. Cardinals 15-5 over the Mets. D-backs 10-4 over the Dodgers. Reds were beaten by the Brewers 6-4. Cubs at 7-3 over the Rangers. The Angels are 5-4 over the White Sox. The Red Sox 10-6 over the Twins. Atlanta 4-3 over the Tigers. The Astros 7-3 over the Mets, and the Blue Jays shut out the Orioles 4-0. The Yankees 6-3 over the Phillies, and the Nationals and Marlins tied 5-5. Another Cubs game must have been split. This is spring training, incidentally. Cleveland 8-3. The Royals 15-3 over the Giants. The Mariners in the spring training game 8-7 over the Angels, and the Rockies 6-5 over the Padres, and finally the Giants 6-4 over the Rockies. On to May the let me make sure what day we're on here. National Hockey League. The Wild 2-1 over the Capitals, and the Sharks were beaten in overtime by the Anaheim Ducks 4-3. And that is the end of that. And let's see here. Well, there were no games in the women's tourney. Must start tomorrow. And what else do we have here? Not a lot. Murray State. We're still talking about Murray State here, and it's Mr. Moran. Anyway, Jay Moran, Jay, I guess. He March Madness. That's the first day recap there. A big picture of him. We'll probably have it up on our masthead. He's an imposing figure. That was Murray State. And as they say, so we goeth into today. Let me just get back over here and get today's schedule. We can get today's schedule. And we need to get today's schedule here. Okay. Well, it's not too bad today. It says the rest of it at Maryland and LSU. That will be on CBS, and then we have Wilford and Kentucky. That'll be at 2:45. And let's see where else. Florida and Michigan at 5:15. Murray State will play Florida State, and don't have the odds here. And Baylor will play Gonzaga tonight. Minnesota and Michigan State. That'll be a well-watched game. So will Gonzaga. And so will Kentucky, Villanova versus the Boilermakers of Purdue. And finally, Auburn versus Kansas. They're still in there, and you can get a ticket for $67. Cheaper tickets. And where are they? That's a Midwest Regional Roundup there. Michigan State game is in Des Moines, Iowa. Gonzaga, well, they're close to home. They're in Salt Lake, so okay. Florida State is playing in Hartford, Connecticut. And Murray State, just looking at some of the tickets here, they vary. The Kentucky game, where is that played? Not sure. But anyway, it's $78. That's the lowest price ticket. You can see these tickets are fairly expensive, so we kind of go along where those are. And let's see, look at the bracket where we are now. Gotten through, let's see, the first round, the second, and then we'll go to the Sweet 16. That'll be next week, the 28th through 29th. So we're getting those schools. Some have already played, and they'll be Duke is already done. They have moved on. LSU has moved on, or will move. Well, let's see. Sweet 16 played in Washington D.C. And we're just looking at see who these characters are. This is the second round. Anyway, we won't quibble on this. Looking at the brackets here doesn't tell us anything, but stay tuned. The next week, the 28th through 29th. Let me look at my calendar here. That'll be Friday and Saturday of next week, and then we'll go to the Elite 8. That'll be March 30th through 31st. And the Final Four will be on April the 6th, and April the 8th will be the championship. Anyway, we move along here. I have to finish up my bracket, I'll be honest. We haven't done very well. Nonetheless, have a good week. We'll see you on the Monday Morning Quarterback. We have Numbers Man coming up this weekend. And we also have the Open Source Report, which he basically finished. A lot of it will be around the Boeing 337, 338. We have to go look and see what it is. But anyway, it will be around that particular airline. We've been looking at it, starting with the Seattle, 737, and that is the MAX 8 and the MAX 9. We'll get that right here. Anyway, that will appear. We'll talk about basically aviation and the part that software plays in it. A very big part indeed. And we'll leave it at that. And hopefully next few days we'll get all about sports and talk more about the money and the March Madness.